I am now 65% through Star Trek Infection, and this has been an absolute roller coaster of a game to play. After 4 hours, I've got to say, through all the aches and pains though, I'm actually enjoying it. But we do have a lot to discuss with this one. I think it's important to let you guys know that I'm a big fan of Star Trek. Some of the issues I'm about to raise and some of the things I like about Star Trek Infection, casual fans might not fully understand or even care about. With that said, I'm going to break this down into story, gameplay, the graphical differences between PCVR and Quest, and then my final thoughts. In Star Trek Infection, you play as a Vulcan who was held prisoner and mentally tortured by the Cardassians. Whatever happened was so severe that you have no memory it ever even took place. And moving on into the future, Starfleet believes they've found the person responsible and has detained them on the USS Lumen, which looks exactly the same as USS Defiant from Deep Space Nine. You're then transported aboard to help with the investigation, but as soon as you arrive, they discover you're carrying some sort of neurological disease or growth that the transporter didn't pick up. You're then put into stasis pending testing to prevent any chance of you infecting the crew with your mysterious disease. When you wake up, the entire ship has undergone some sort of alien transformation.
I was unconscious for an undetermined period. I recall a Cardassian held in the brig. Starfleet intelligence believed he might be Tarell Marut. My memory is clouded.
The crew has been affected, turning most of them into aggressive zombies, and there's also some strange dimensional creatures roaming the ship. But thanks to your Vulcan physiology and your lack of emotion, you have some sort of control over this disease. You can use these mutant-like powers to your advantage, but every time you infect one or both of your arms, you actually take damage. You basically have 5 health slots. Infecting both arms takes 2 slots, and filling all 5 brings you close to an instant death. That is, unless you use a hypo spray or reach a transporter pad, which can reset your level of infection once the ship's holographic doctor enables this later in the game. Throughout Star Trek Infection, the thing you'll use most is your Tricorder. You use this to scan the ship and items like crew comms badges, which grant you access to more areas. The ship is massive, and the Tricorder also serves as your map, and it will log all the information you gather by scanning various objects. You also carry a phaser that can be set to stun or kill. Stun mode recharges quickly and is great for slowing down the enemy, and if used against some dimensional creatures, it can actually kill them. When you set your phaser to kill mode, you only get 5 shots before needing a recharge, and the charging stations are quite scarce. So Star Trek Infection is primarily a stealth game mixed with item collection. You can use the classic Vulcan nerve pinch to take down infected crew by holding the trigger at the correct spot on their neck. Each enemy drops a spore which you need to collect to craft items like the hypo sprays, and there's other tools you can make like stun grenades. There are at least 6 other ingredients you need to collect to make the hypo sprays, so you're constantly searching around for them. And thankfully the amount of these things you can carry is infinite. The ship is cool to explore, but it's easy to get lost. Luckily, if you tap your comms badge, you'll get optional guidance, and this points you directly to your next objective, and I highly recommend using it for your first playthrough. Your alien powers allow you to fast travel to inaccessible areas using glowing eyes that you need to link together with the vines from your hands. And these powers can also be used to take down the enemy. There are some interesting mechanics too. For example, there is a ghost-like creature that can only be killed after you scan its power source, and this will then make it physical and vulnerable to your phaser attacks. And then later on in the game, you'll even face up against some even bigger creatures. But now let's talk about mechanics and frustrations. This game does feel pretty disjointed, especially at first. The opening hour or so is quite a snooze fest, and it really starts to pick up after about the 90-minute mark, and that's when I began to really enjoy it. However, there's quite a lot of jank to deal with too. Things like your hands getting stuck, unclear navigation for when you're using the vines, and frequent deaths can become tiresome. Usually though, dying does actually teach you something for your next attempt. There's a couple of decent jump scares which was welcome, and the narrative is definitely the main driver. The story is delivered mostly by text using terminals, but also you'll be regularly chatting to the holodeck doctor and the only survivor, who just so happens to be the Cardassian who is acting as your friend, but could also be the guy responsible for the infection, your past imprisonment, and is currently trying to thwart your attempts at finding a cure. As a Star Trek fan, this is where I found my most enjoyment. I also want to add it's the first time any Star Trek fan will get to physically use a phaser, and on the whole, it does actually feel great, and the sound effects throughout the game, when they work, is also pretty cool. But with that being said, because it's a stealth game, you don't get to go on a mindless killing spree though, and I actually like that balance. The limited phaser shots force you to sneak around and use the nerve pinch, and the infected crew can actually still surprise you. Since I don't want to keep you guys forever, I'm going to list the jank of negatives I've come across so far. The nerve pinch doesn't always register properly even when the hand prompt appears. A couple of times I died and there was no visible reason why that happened. Audio cues and sound effects are inconsistent. There's a constant barrage of on-screen text that's often very badly timed. Your height cannot be adjusted manually via the options, so if you play this game seated, it looks like you're constantly walking while leaning backwards. Also to note, if you don't follow on-screen instructions exactly, the game struggles to adapt or learn that you simply already know what to do, and this can literally halt your progress. For example, there's a simple dot connecting puzzle where you need to draw or erase lines, but the game doesn't clearly explain it, and if you don't do everything exactly when it wants you to, your in-game progress simply stops. Now onto graphics. Graphically, the Quest version does struggle. Your arms and movement feel jittery, there's graphical hitching, and overall it's not the prettiest game on the platform. I used Quest Optimizer to improve it though, and I knocked the resolution down by 9%. I turned off asynchronous space warp, pushed the CPU and GPU to maximum, and enabled level 4 fixed foveated rendering, and this actually helped a lot. That said, I've mostly been playing the PCVR version, which is noticeably better than I expected. I assumed it would just be a straight port, but the lighting and details are vastly improved. The game actually looks pretty good on PCVR, and if you have access to both, I strongly recommend playing the PCVR version over Quest. It's not staggeringly different, but the upgrade is definitely worth it. So on to my final thoughts. Star Trek Infection is a janky game with a compelling story, especially for Star Trek fans. Just being in that universe on its own is enough of a reason for most Star Trek fans who own a VR headset to want to check this out, but it's got plenty of friction and takes a while to get going, and I wouldn't be surprised if many people nope out after the first hour or 90 minutes. This isn't helped, especially on Quest, high performance and average visuals. Then regardless of platform, we have the janky interactions and some confusion of simply knowing what to do next, combined with all the other frustrations that I've already mentioned. Overall, and this is speaking as a fan of Star Trek, I do give Star Trek Infection a wait for a sale recommendation. It's good, but it still needs some updates to fix some of the issues, and even then, I still don't think this is something I would consider a day one purchase for most people. The zombie stealth gameplay is not exactly the Star Trek game I think most people want from the franchise. If you're like me and have played the amazing Star Trek Bridge Crew, which by the way, if you haven't, I'll leave a link to my review of that game at the end of this video. What we really want is a fully fleshed out version of Star Trek Bridge Crew, but you're not only stuck in space, you get to visit planets and go on away missions with people online. I want to add, I do like Star Trek Infection enough to wait for some updates before I finish it. So ultimately, for hardcore Trekkies, I think you might find some enjoyment, especially if you have access to the PCVR version. But outside of that, it's probably best to wait for a deep sale if you want to buy it on Quest. Well, that's all I've got for you today. Thank you to everyone who likes and subscribes, and I'll see you on the next one.